I am excited. This gets my motor running for sure. Let's all stand together. We're going to pray, and then we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And so let's all stand together. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for your Son, Jesus. We thank you, Lord, for the freedom that you've given to us, that we don't take for granted. That's why we're standing in this room today. We're standing together in your name, under one nation, under God. We thank you, Lord, for all that you're doing in this country right now. And Lord, I know you're shaking the country. I know you are. And it's your hand that's shaking this country, because, Lord, you want us to rise up. You want us to stand and to take our place that you called us to. And so, Lord, that's what we're doing here tonight. And so we thank you. We pray you bless each person here tonight. As we hear from John and Troy, we just pray, Lord, that you will speak to them and speak through them. And, Lord, you'll answer our questions, because we want so much to see Wyoming strong, Wyoming standing, and Wyoming especially listening to you. And so we thank you, Father. So bless each person here. We thank you, and we praise you that we can do this tonight. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just limited to 20 minutes, so we're cutting the speech in half. All right, I'm not really going to give a speech tonight. I'm just going to tell you guys kind of what I've been through, and just to kind of give you an indication of what it would be like to be in political office at the state level, but also what's going on down there. I'm not going to get into the particulars, because Troy and I have got 4 town hall meetings coming up, and we invite you to those. There's a flyer over there on the table. Thank you, Nancy, for getting that done and getting it ready. But these town halls are where we'll be talking about very specific bills, that type of thing. And I'd be happy to talk about those bills tonight if you want to reach me afterwards. And Troy may be speaking to the bills as well from the Senate perspective. But I want to start by just telling you that this time last year, I had no idea I would be running for a state office and have been a representative. And so that was really the big thing that happened to me this last year was Vicki Kissick came to me and asked me if I would run for Scott Clem's seat. And, I paid pretty close attention to federal politics, somewhat to local politics. I'd written letters to my legislators at the state office before, but really hadn't paid a lot of close attention to it until this summer when I started running for office. And I am by no means an expert at this point, but I have learned a great deal. And I've thrown myself into it. But the reason I want to tell you about that is because my mindset was, I'm busy. I've got a business to run, a family to take care of, and I don't have time to be that involved with politics. But when Vicki asked me to run, the first thing I did was pray and talk to my wife about it, and she's the one coming up with the idea for dinners for 8, and she's full of ideas, so you be careful around her. Anyway, we got to thinking about our grandkids and what this world is going to be like for them compared to what we grew up in and what our children grew up in, and the impetus and the importance of running for office and representing the people of this county, of which I had a great idea of what the people were like because of my business. I'm often on the front counter or at the drive-thru talking to people, and if you know me very well, I don't hold back on my opinions and certainly hear a lot of other people's opinions. And I felt that I really was a good representative simply because I had the same ideals, the same concept of government responsibility as the people of this county. And I still hold that to be true after going to 1,500 homes last summer, talking to the Republicans in my county, and I'm highly confident that that's the truth of my district, but of this entire county. And now that I've spent time down in Cheyenne and have impacted and been impacted by a lot of people from around the state, I can tell you that it's true statewide. And so the question is, if we are really these conservative people that have these conservative ideals, and by that I mean Republican ideals of small government, greater responsibility as well as liberty for each of us, and limited amount of taxation, a limited amount of government involvement in our lives, if we're really that way and thinking that way, then why is the state government doing things that are quite contrary to that? And let me tell you, they have been and they still are. And so you want to get those details, and we'll talk about some of those tonight, but those town halls will be a great place to find out exactly what's happening down there to cause you to lose your liberties. So, having said that, I just felt like I needed to get down there and do my part. And I started reading through the Declaration of Independence again. I've read it before. And I came to the last words in the Declaration of Independence. Does anybody here know what the last words in the Declaration of Independence is? I think I brought it. I don't have it on me right now. But you'll remember this when you hear it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Barbie.
Pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Yes.
Something like that.
So the signers of the Constitution, or of the Declaration of Independence, pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to each other. And I said to myself, and I hope that each of you will ask this question of yourselves too, who are we to think that we should give any less to keep what they gave us? And I really hope you'll ask that question of yourself. Having been down there, and I'll get into the details of what I experienced down there in a moment, a lot of ideas came through my mind about Campbell County and what needs to happen here so that we can be more effective there. And, you know, I've had a lot of people contact me that have been very upset with what's going on in Washington, D.C. I doubt there's anybody in this room that doesn't have some concern about what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., and the last election included. But if you think about what's going on out there in D.C. and how much impact we can have on that, it's almost none. We can't do a whole lot about what's happening there now. What we can do something about is what's happening right here. Yep. And I've spoken to Colleen and to Del Shellstad about things that are going on in our own county that make our state look kind of conservative at times. And how is that possible? The way it's possible is that we have people run for these offices, like these good people in the back, and they get into those positions and they operate those boards. And unfortunately, they don't get any feedback from us. When was the last time any of us went to one of their board meetings and just observed what they're doing? A few of us do. But it is not what all of us do. And if that statement that I made earlier about pledging our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, then shouldn't we be willing to give up a few hours a month to go and observe a board? Here was my idea. My idea was that this group right here should be about 10 times the size that it is. Right. I know nobody here would complain about that, would they? Maybe the sisters would. The person it seems. But when this group is 300 strong, and everybody who gets in here looks at a board when they come in and says, okay, this next year I want to volunteer to pay attention to this particular board. I either know somebody who's on that board, or I'm interested in it because of something in my own life, or my gosh, they've got a whole lot of money reserved up and I'd like to know what the heck they're doing with that. You sign up for that particular board, and over the next year, you and about 6 other people go to that board every month and pay attention to what's going on in that board. Then you come back here, and if something is interesting happening, good or bad, you report to this group of 300 people. And if it's good, and we need to pat some people on the back, you spread the word so that people like that feel gratitude for what they're doing. They're giving their time with no compensation a lot of times for what they're doing. And they need to hear from you that, hey, we really appreciate your volunteering and doing that. But at the same time, when they get a little bit haywire and they aren't doing things the way the people of Campbell County would do it in their own homes, then we come back to this group and we say, hey, the next meeting we'd like to have 50 to 100 of us show up. Do you think that things would change in Campbell County?
Yeah.
And if things changed in Campbell County, what do you think would happen in Crook County, in Weston County, in Johnson County? Pretty soon, the northern half of the state is is a beacon to the rest of the state. And pretty soon, Wyoming is a beacon to the country. And pretty soon, you no longer are not having an impact on what's going on in Washington, D.C. But it starts with each and every one of us giving that kind of effort. I wouldn't ask anybody to do what I did. Don't go in head first into the state office and spend the kind of time that I have. I mean, if you have the desire and the time to do it, great. I mean, it has been a wonderful experience, and I'm looking forward to it continuing on and having an impact down there. And I'm about to tell you about what kind of impact we've already had. But I want to tell you that when you pledge your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor, it should mean something, okay? And I'm not asking anybody in this room to spend more than about 3 hours a month of doing that. And I think that if that is interesting to you guys, I want to hear from you after this meeting. And I think we can get the wheels rolling to give everybody an opportunity to be involved. Think about it. Colleen can tell you, when they need to fill a position on a board in the middle of a term, it's impossible to find somebody that's got the time and energy and willingness to serve on those boards, let alone that has some sort of knowledge of what's happening in that board. But if this group had 6 to 8 people that attended every single board, we'd have 6 to 8 experts in every one of those fields. And all it would take is to let a few of them have that opportunity, and they would jump up and do it. So there's a lot of advantages to doing something like that. Now, down to the House, what happened? So I got down there and was asked to be a part of a group which is named the Freedom Caucus. So much like what you see in Washington, D.C., I was a part of a group of 17 legislators amongst 60 in the House. We invited Troy to a couple of our meetings and a few other senators. But basically, we are the conservatives of the conservatives. And if you've ever heard of a website run by Doug Gerard called Evidence-Based Wyoming, I would recommend you go there. I'm not going to give you the list of names of people that are part of the Freedom Caucus, but you can easily go there and look at the voting records and find out exactly who it is. All you got to do is compare any legislator to Kathy Connolly. She's the minority floor leader, the Democrat of Democrats in our House. And anybody that's on the opposite end, you can just count the first 17 from the opposite end, and you can know who the Freedom Caucus is. Then, on that website, you can get a little chart like this. You can imagine what blue is. Blue is all the Democrats in the House of Representatives. Okay, that orange one is our only independent, and the green down here, apart from the Democrats, that's our Libertarian. And guess what? The Libertarian is part of the Freedom Caucus. We don't agree with that gentleman on social issues very often, but we do agree with him on fiscal items, and we certainly want to ally with him on those fiscal items. So this year, the governor came out with a budget cutting $430 million. When it came to the House, a lot of effort was made, and a lot of testimony was made to add money back into that. We were told, oh, we don't have to worry about spending because the price of oil's going up. Not going to be a problem. David Iverson, if you get a chance to listen to his blog, he had a recording of one of the representatives came on after my speech talking about fiscal responsibility, saying, whoa, wait a minute, you're putting a glass slipper on this budget, and we're making it hard on future legislators that want to spend more money. Okay? That's the kind of stuff we hear day in and day out. Okay? But we're fighting it. We're fighting constantly. And we were persuading other legislators to vote with us. So we were having, on average, 23 to 25 votes going our way. But it takes how many to get anything won in the Senate or in the House? 31. Okay? So we didn't have that many, and so we lost a lot of things, and thank goodness the Senate is much more conservative. They were able to stop a lot of bad legislation. But a year ago, when I didn't think I was running, and then I went into my campaign, I had a feeling that I would come back from this session, and there'd be an income tax in Wyoming. But there is no income tax in Wyoming. In fact, we passed no new taxes. Okay? And we cut $430 million in the state budget.
Yeah.
Our biggest failure was on the last day. when the House and the Senate could not reconcile the budget for the school funding, okay? So school funding continues on based on the budget that we created last year. And this is not a good thing. We have now cut 25% out of our regular general fund budget, but we have cut 0 out of education.
You think you get all back?
We will go back in July for special session to deal with this ARPA money that's coming from President Biden. Okay, we're gonna have to deal with that and getting that money distributed throughout the state. But the bottom line is, education funding is where our biggest challenges are. And I can get into a lot of details. I'd rather talk about that at a later time and make sure that Troy has time to talk tonight. But I'll tell you, I have ideas and I have plans, and I'm working with some real brilliant people in the education realm to try to figure out something that will change education in the state of Wyoming. It'll take a long, long time to do that, long beyond what I'm able to serve in the House of Representatives.
Can you briefly describe that?
I really can't. Right now it's pretty ethereal. We don't have concrete plans, but we're going to be working this summer to come up with a 20-year plan as to how we can get education where it needs to be. My idea, and I'm not the part of that brain trust, I'm just putting it together, but my idea is that we need to have competition, because competition leads to excellence. And the two things that we need for education in Wyoming is excellence at a reasonable cost. And competition can provide both of those things. So what I'd really like to do is have that be our end goal. The problem is, the way the Constitution is written today, it stifles competition. And there have been forces at play, and they're still in the House of Representatives today, that want to get every dime possible into education and make no effort to make it more streamlined and efficient, let alone more productive as far as providing a great education for our children.
Is that federal versus privatization, John?
Explain your question.
Right now, most of our education is federally based.
Okay.
And a lot of people are clamoring for privatization, which is conducive to competition.
I don't think you can ever go completely in this country to complete private on education. That'd be great if we could. I think it would be a better program. But you're going to have to provide education to everyone, and therefore you're going to have a public component. The federal government provides less than 10% of the financing for this education, K through 12, in the state of Wyoming. Less than 10%. Now, we couldn't get a 0.65% cut to education this year. But if we could get a 10% cut, we could tell the federal government to go pound sand when it comes to all of their curriculum, all their requirements, all those things.
Let's go.
Okay, and that, in my mind, would be part of that long-range plan. Okay, but it's not just certain legislators that need to be replaced to fix this. We have something called the WEA, the Wyoming Education Association, which is just a state arm of the NEA. And this is a very powerful lobby. There is no larger voting bloc in the state of Wyoming than educators. Okay? So a lot of legislators are very leery of doing the right thing with education, because those forces are telling the teachers, I don't know, Troy, how many postcards did you get this session from the WEA?
I'll bet they spent $500.
On you personally, on stuff he sent to him, and $500 they sent on to stuff on me. So they're trying to have an impact, but it's not truthful, it's not reality. But unfortunately, a lot of the educators are listening to them, and they're signing their names on these letters and these postcards, but not really understanding that their own jobs are in jeopardy if they keep going the way we're going. So it's a big deal. Education is where my focus is going to be. I've been a co-sponsor of pro-life bills. We got 4 of those advanced. 2 of them were signed into law. I was a co-sponsor of the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which made it out of the Senate and never went anywhere in the House for various reasons. So, pro Second Amendment, and, really the big thing for me, though, is this fiscal responsibility. And to do that, we've got to change this right here. And I can't change the ones that are outside Campbell County. I can have an impact on some of our other legislators who aren't here tonight that are up in this area. There are a few. But all of us need to know who they are. And all of us need to be telling our friends that live in their districts that they need to get rid of them and get somebody that thinks like the rest of us. One last thing I want to tell you about. How familiar are you guys with Medicaid expansion? Okay. Medicaid expansion is Obamacare. It came about as part of Obamacare. It has been put away and defeated over the last 10 years. This year, for the first time, it passed the House. On a very narrow margin, there were 28 of us voting against it, but 32 voted for it, including a lot of Republicans. So that is getting closer and closer to becoming reality, that is not fiscally responsible. It's a bad program, and I'm happy to tell any of you about it afterwards. I'm going to wrap up now and give Troy an opportunity. But thank you very much for listening, and look forward to big help. 5 to 10 minute videos every single night letting you know what's going on down there. I pick a couple of bills that we worked on that day just to let you know what's going on. There's a lot of boring stuff that you wouldn't be that interested in, but I do pick a couple of highlights and share that. That's on my Facebook page, and the easiest way to get to that is at John Bear for Gillette. Okay, so that's a great resource, and that's part of our contract of being just transparent about what's going on down there.
And YouTube doesn't censor you?
This is on Facebook, and surely that day is coming where we will be censored, but I'm going to use it as long as I can. One nice thing about it is most of you that aren't watching me have probably already been kicked off of Facebook, so I'm actually probably impacting more of the people who aren't here, and we want to do that. We want to get more and more people in here. One of the things that Bob Hollander did is he encouraged everybody to bring somebody else this time, and I love it when we're packing the house. This is what we're going to do. You can't get to 300 if we're not packing the house. Okay? Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me the two pro-life that they become law?
Yeah. Okay, 2 pro-life bills. The first one is Senate File 34, which was infant born alive, means of care. And what this is if there's an abortion performed and the baby is born, that baby, once it's out of the womb, has to be treated like the rest of us and given life-saving care. Okay? Anything other than that is going to be murder. Okay? So, or whatever it is. It may be manslaughter, but they have to try to give that life-saving care. Now, this was vetoed by the governor the previous year, and he signed it into law this year. Well, it got out of the House and the Senate last year, but the governor vetoed it. So
That was Senate File 31.
34. The other was Lynn Hutchins' bill, Senate File 120. I can't remember exactly, but it was the homicide amendments was the name of it. If you look up homicide amendments, and what it had to do was if you murdered a pregnant woman, it would count as 2 murders if the unborn infant died. Okay? Now, something that the left did with this bill, at the very last minute, after it had passed the Senate and was almost passed the House on the 3rd reading, the very last vote, they brought an amendment to remove the death penalty as part of that bill. They tried to stuff repealing of the death penalty into that bill. And so we defeated that, and we passed the bill. So,
Nice.
You can kill the babies, you just can't kill adults.
right. You understand the dichotomy there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, conservative values are at stake every day down there, and that was the last day. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What was that website that you identified that where the Freedom Caucus was?
Yes, sir. Evidence-based Wyoming. Do you mind, Troy, if I take a moment and just read the people who voted for Medicaid expansion? Would you guys like to hear the names?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll skip over the Democrats. You'd expect them to vote for that, right? there aren't any Democrats that are getting elected here. They're all down in Albany County, where Laramie is. Okay, top of the list, voting for Medicaid expansion. Okay, and this is a growth of government. This is providing health care to able-bodied citizens, which is going to reduce the amount of health care that people who are in wheelchairs and elderly, they get, because it's going to take resources away from them. So, top of the list, Representative Barlow in House District 3. Representative Duncan, Representative Harshman, McGuire, Romero Martinez. He's the gentleman that, he's a Republican, but he did bring the repeal of the death penalty. Representative Newsom, Representative Oakley, Obermueller, Representative O'Hearn, Olson, Paxton, Roscoe, he's the independent though, Sweeney, Wilson, Brown, Crago, that's from Sheridan. A Sheridan representative voted for Medicaid expansion. Of course, so did the Campbell County one. Eklund, Iyer, Henderson, Kinner, Larson, Nicholas, Summers, he's the House, the Majority Floor Leader, Stiff, and Zwanitzer. So they ended up with 32 votes for Medicaid expansion in the House, 23 of which were Republicans. 23. Yes.
I was looking at some stuff this evening, and it looks like Medicaid expansion will go into the interim committee.
Yep. Yeah, anytime it gets past one of the houses, it becomes a hot topic that they can carry on. There's a lot of things that will go into the interim that we defeated that we're just going to have to keep fighting against. They're going to come up and come up and come up. And as more people move into the state of Wyoming, you can imagine that they're going to bring some of those values with them. And so those are going to create even more impetus for these more liberal ideas to pass in the House. So.
What happens in the interim committee?
Okay, the question was, what happens in the interim committee? So in the interim, the standing committees from the House and the Senate that have the same name, for instance, I'm part of the Minerals Committee, they come together into what's called a joint committee, and that committee will work, they will have meetings 2 to 4 times during the off-season to discuss bills that either died, that came close, that were good ideas, or that citizens have brought ideas and said, hey, we'd like to see this move further, that type of thing. And so, for instance, in the minerals, in our committee, we're working on things that are going to be contrary to your carbon credit, things that you see in other states around us. We're going to be trying to promote carbon being burned to produce electricity, stable, reliable electricity. So we're pushing back. This year we did pass a bill funding lawsuits against other states around us that are putting standards in place where, you know, they're not going to burn coal. And the problem with that is as these coal plants get shut down because we don't have customers that we're exporting to, it starts to affect us and our reliability. And if you just saw and think about what happened in Texas, we can't afford that. It gets cold around here, and we're going to want some electricity when that happens. So we're fighting hard to keep the coal burning. That's an idea. One of the things that Representative Sweeney is, I think, is he from Natrona County? He has an R by his name, but he brought a bill that was, if you get a chance to go and watch the testimony in the committee, it was a SOGI bill. That's sexual orientation, gender identity, thank you. A bill. It was killed immediately in committee, but some of the testimony was just, it was visceral and disgusting. The kind of language that was used, and so those people who are promoting that particular ideology aren't very nice. I'll just say it that way. And so that's going to be an interim topic. They're attempting to create thought crime is what it really boils down to. We have criminal statutes for murder, for theft, for all kinds of things, but now we're going to look at what was your motive and what was going through your head. And so we need to stop those things right now. That is not judicial. That is something that will divide us all. And we certainly know that there are efforts to divide us as a people. So They have to fight that at every turn. But again, I'll go back to my idea about what we need to do here. When we know that we have the kind of support in our own county that we should have, it's a whole lot easier to stand strong and vote down there the way we should. Troy and I had to vote strong because we signed a contract. We didn't have much choice, okay?
So did you hear a lot from the conservative group, people that are in this room?
So did I hear a lot from the people in this room? Yeah, I did. I would tell you that you were being overshadowed by the minority, though, the loud minority. And here's the problem. When you're listening to testimony in these committees, it's the middle of the day. What are all you doing during the middle of the day? You're working, right?
Keep your lights on.
And we know that. So we don't get to hear from you when these items are coming up. We hear from the left that have just left the university and had taken time off from class to come down and tell us how things should be. I can tell you, for me personally, it doesn't have a lot of impact because I know where you all stand. But there are other legislators that are more easily swamped and so persuade. And so we do, whenever possible, want to hear from you. But it is a struggle. The one good thing I can say for the legislature that has come out of COVID-19 is that you don't have to go down to Cheyenne to do it. Now you can testify by going on Zoom and testifying. You just sign up within about 24 hours that you want to testify, and you can go on. You don't even have to testify if you don't feel like it, or if somebody else has said what you wanted to say. But if you don't hear what needs to be said, you just click on there when you're called on by the chairman, and you get to speak. And so you don't even have to drive all the way down there. So there's a good thing. Okay? Great questions. Yes, sir. Oh, one last one. Last question.
How much impact does writing our representatives and legislators, how much impact does writing those people really have?
That's a great question. How much impact does receiving a letter from you all have? I can tell you that a handwritten letter, I got two handwritten letters. So that had a lot of impact when I read those. I got a stack that thick from the WEA of postcards that they printed out and printed somebody's name. That nobody signed them. Those meant very little to me. And I know that the people that were, whose names were on each of those cards didn't have a real grasp of what was going on. Most people contact us via email, okay? So that's where we're hearing most of our contact. Now, a lot of those emails, if it's not from here, I delete them. I don't have time to read them. I get about 200 emails a day. And you're trying to do the people's business and read those emails and respond to those emails. So I only respond to the ones from here. There might be somebody every now and then that will support a bill that I'm on that I might send a thank you to. But other than that, I'm just listening to you. So if you're going to send something to everybody down there, you need to send it to each of them one at a time. When they look at the from and the to has 60 names on it, nobody's reading it. Nobody's reading it. I am, if it comes from one of you. I'll still read it.
How do you know it comes from one of us?
Well, that's a great question. How do I know? The only way I know is if you put Campbell County, Gillette, Wyoming, something along those lines. If I don't see that, I have no idea, and it probably goes in the trash. I do tend to read what the subject is, and it kind of gives me an idea of what the volume is as far as support or opposition to a particular bill. Rarely does that sway my vote, because I've made a decision based on my values, and my values come from living with you all and running for office and telling you what my values are, being elected based on those values. If ever my values are contrary to yours, I shouldn't be representing you. That's the way I look at it.
Sometimes if you have their cell phone, you can text them and you're watching what's going on and you can comment. They do watch that sometimes, aren't you guys?
That is true. I do have that.
Thank you very
Hey,
much.
don't
Yeah,
listen
thank
to
you.
all
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I feel like I'm the sergeant of all. All right, Troy, would you please come on up? Senator Troy McKeown will help us tonight.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
This really warms my heart.
left, this group was not this big. So you all need to give yourself an I'm gonna go back to a comment John made. He didn't get any feedback? Well, I got lots of feedback. See, I'm breathtakingly ignorant. I say that they're good at coming up with this stuff. They're good at coming up with this stuff. And it all came out of the Medicaid expansion bill, which I kind of voted poorly on to begin with, which meant I had to go kill it twice. And after I killed it the second time, I'm breathtakingly ignorant. I do want to talk about it a little bit. It has put Utah in a bad place. And you can ask John too. When we went to ALEC, it was a group of brand new legislators. We sat in a room and pretended like we knew what we were doing. Utah was the best state in the nation. Strongest economy, right? It's in trouble now. What happens with Medicaid expansion is everybody gets on it. You work at Home Depot, you don't need to pay for insurance. Just drop it and get on Medicaid expansion. And they tell you it's going to be 24,000 people. It's probably going to be 60 to 80,000 people before it's said and done. And they tell you they're going to give you 90% match, federal funding match. That's not true. Our FMAP in Wyoming is 35%. And do you know why our FMAP is? Does everybody know what FMAP is?
No.
That's the federal matching funds to support Medicaid. And do you know why we're at 35 or 40%? Jackson Hole. Yeah. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, all on its own, gets everybody in Wyoming up to an average of $68,000 a year. They're not going to give us 90%. And they may not even do it for 2 years. And once you get on it, you can't get off. You're stuck. And that's where the breathtakingly ignorant comment came. So I sent them back to federal statute. So we were good. We were good. We killed that. We're going to fight that the whole time I'm there. Wyoming are like crack addicts for federal funding. You say federal dollars, and they're like, oh, we need those. I heard somebody in LSO call it pennies from heaven. Oh, we're getting some pennies from heaven. Well, understand this. If the federal government's giving you money, it's a bribe.
Yeah.
That's how they get around the 10th Amendment. They're not sending it because they care. They probably don't love us that much, unfortunately. But John brought up school funding. You want to talk about make you mad. We're going to take ARP funds or ARPA funds or whatever we're going to call the magic pennies from heaven. We wanted to cut the school system 3%. 3% is where we got. And then we were going to backfill the 3% and make them put the ARPA funds into a savings account. We couldn't even get that done with the school system. Because it's all about the children, the poor children. So we'll be back down there fighting that issue in July. And what we're going to do with all our pennies from heaven that our kids and grandkids are going to pay for years. That $1,400 stimulus check everybody got, do you know what you're going to pay back when you got that check? $14,785. So, are we better off? Hmm. And then I laugh, as many of you knew, going through my campaign, and some of the evil people that would say, "Oh, it's going to take him a year to figure out how to get into the Capitol, let alone do anything." I'm going to tell you something I pulled off. I'm quite proud of it. We had a bill called Senate File 80. Takes power away from the health officers.
Yeah.
I started that on the first day I was down there. The first day. I got it through the Senate. We sent it to the House, where it got put in a drawer. And then the Speaker of the House sent his version to us, which was basically the governor can do whatever the governor wants, whenever the governor wants, and the health officers are all going to be all powerful. I amended it 3 times. Sent it back to the House. There's a bill sitting on the governor's desk with Eric Barlow's name on it that is what we wrote in the Senate. So we're getting some things done. We really are. And I'm fortunate. I get to hang out in the Senate. So they're a little more conservative at that end of the hall. You start making fun of them, and they don't like taxes. So you can kind of win a few down there. We call the other end of the, well, I better not, huh? No, it's amazing. It is. And y'all are doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. We, in about another 18 months, are going to hit it again. And we got to get 3 more, 4 more, 5 more seats flipped. If we can get 3 or 4 senators swapped out, you'd be amazed at how powerful that group's going to be. We're getting closer, and we like to call it the House of No, which is good. No's a good word. And I just laugh. I spent 41 days down there. And you now can eat roadkill. That's what we did. I'm not making this up. You hit a deer, throw it in the back of your truck. Big pump. We spent 2 hours arguing over what it was going to cost you. They wanted you to buy a $150 permit. So when you run the deer over, you could take it home. I mean, I imagine everybody in this room has hit a deer or been in a car that hit a deer, been around a deer. You hit a deer at 70 miles an hour, you're going to be lucky to get 15 pounds of meat off of it. So you're now buying rancid deer for $10 a pound. But fortunately, we stripped the fee out, so if you're on your way home tonight and you hit a deer, it was amazing. It was a great experience. I can't wait to get back down there and start arguing with them again. And maybe we did quite a few good things. So the baby born alive bill that came through my committee, and that, believe it or not, was rough. You'd think you'd get 80 or 85 votes out of 90 on it. And he barely made it through. And there was I can't make this up. There was a bill so that you cannot go get a selective abortion. I don't even know who thinks this up. Oh, we did a test, and we think your child's going to be born with Down syndrome. Would you like to keep it or not? Was really the question. And I went to a committee meeting, and I was very fortunate that my good friends were there with me, John Baird, Chip Nyman, and they had this doctor talking. I'm going to tell you the question I asked him. So, are we going to start killing 2-year-olds that have Down syndrome? And he pivoted, started talking about it. Do you remember what he was talking about? He came back and I said, you haven't answered my question. And he said, you're asking me when life starts. Well, you're not that stupid. Oh, we'll get him adopted. What? This man actually said, okay, so you get sick of your Down syndrome child, and 2 years later you just adopt it to somebody else. And we got that bill passed too, so you can't go get, I think it was even called selective abortion, wasn't it? But what's amazing is we killed a lot of things, especially in the Senate. We're starting to get kind of powerful. Some of us are probably causing too much problems now. But it's been interesting. And I'm about to run out of time.
You've got 8 minutes.
Okay.
Take 9.
Oh, I got 8 more minutes.
seconds left to
And like a good politician, watch me use it up. No, but Janet and Justin came down and saw us. I'm getting there. Ed and Sue Sisti was down there. The Junics came down. Anybody? Here's how crazy they are. And Janet's going to tell you the story. They let me run the Senate one day. We flew through 22 bills.
He was on task.
Some guy stood up and said, I want to divide this amendment. I said, nope. Denied. We did end up dividing it, though. It's always great to see you come down. If you get a chance, you should go watch. We're all in this little fishbowl. You stand there and listen to people just talk for hours. I love Charlie Scott, but when he stands up, he gets all leaned over. Mr. President, Mr. President. And he'll go for 30 minutes and say 3 minutes worth of stuff. You almost want to poke your eyeball out sometimes.
They should probably know how long he's been in the...
Oh, and here's the special part. Charlie Scott was elected into the Senate when people were still riding horses. 44 years. 44 years. Mr. President. What else did we really did some things.
How about the college district?
Oh, boy. Okay. So the college district. I got lots of love on email over that from Gillette. You're the only guy who didn't vote for it. You think you know more than we do? Well, I'm going to tell you why I didn't vote for that bill. And I do think the people of Gillette, Campbell County, need to vote on it. But I don't think they told you the truth.
No.
They're telling you they're gonna do it for 2 mills. Yet they're requesting $16 million. So if a mill's worth about $4 million, you do the simple math, that's 4 mills, isn't it? Last time I checked, 4 times 4 is 16. Oh, we don't need state or federal funding for this. Do you know what happens if they don't get state and federal funding? They're gonna hire professors that don't get health care, that don't get a retirement. They gotta get it up to 4 mills to begin with, just to hire people. But we're gonna do it for 2. And then every meeting I went to, they led me to believe, y'all gonna get to vote on the mill levy. No. County commissioners are gonna oversee it. No. What they're gonna do is, they're gonna have an election, and you're gonna decide if you want a college or not, and then you're gonna elect 7 trustees. And those trustees can crank that mill levy all the way up to 5 without even asking. If they want 6, then you get to vote. I love the college. My kids have gone there. It's a good school. But at the end of the day, know what you're voting for. And they're very good at marketing. Just the way they marketed Medicaid expansion. We gotta have that. There's kids that don't have health care. And one lady said, "You're the biggest hypocrite ever." I'm like, okay. You are retired Army. You're getting free federal health care. And I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you ever been to a VA hospital?" I don't go because I want to live. And oh, by the way, ma'am, anybody wants the fantastic health care you think I have, send them my way. I can get them on the path to get there. It's only going to take 20 years. But the good news is, during that 20 years, you're going to get free health care. They're going to give you some food and some clothes. And hopefully you live through it. And then you can get your health care at the VA. We were fighting. I'll bring up one last thing. We were fighting for the health care bill. And it looked like I was going to lose. I don't like to lose. So we're on 3rd reading of this thing, and I literally stood up and said, when will you people realize you work for the people that elected you and not the governor? Oh, by the way, Mr. President, I'm going to call for the ayes and noes. I want everybody on record for this.
Good.
And we'll see if he signs it. He hasn't signed it yet. I imagine he may not. I think he likes the power. We'll find out. And with that, questions? Anybody? Anything? Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us what's become of redistricting? I know they're working on it, but I can't find the information.
I can answer that. Everything got held up because the census didn't get the results to the states. So it will be worked on during the interim, but nothing has been done so far.
It probably will happen towards the end of September. They'll all go into a deep, dark, secret room. Don't get me started on the Leadership and Management Council. Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't redistricting in the equality bill, and wasn't it supposed to be directed by the Democrats?
Yes, it was.
And so how does that apply to a state that wants to do their own redistricting?
There's a difference between the
Federal versus
federal
state.
versus the state. Redistricting for our districts versus Liz Cheney's, which kind of hard to figure out what her district's going to be other than the borders of the state. But you also, in other states, it's a big deal because of getting federal representation.
Yes, sir.
I read something some time ago, don't know if anything's
That makes sense.
happening with us, but is there anything in the works to, not mandate, but to make it so that anybody changing their affiliation from D to R has to do it within a certain period of time before the election?
We got close. We got close. We're gonna do it again. We needed 15, 16 votes, and we got 14. It lost 14 to 16 in the Senate. But you'll see it again.
We're working.
Did anybody at all talk about federal lands becoming Wyoming state lands? Then we would not have this problem with the resident in the White House at the moment. If we had done this a decade ago and made sure all public lands are Wyoming lands, not federal, like they are in South Dakota, and all the other ones just to the east of us.
Why? It was earlier. We're crack addicts. We get federal money. We don't want to give our federal money up. That is the biggest hurdle with that right now. Everybody wants federal government to take care of all this land for us because it's expensive. Thinking, how hard is it to take care of sagebrush? But it is. It's all about.
How much is that federal money that you're talking about? What are we looking at dollar-wise?
In July, we'll be working on $1.9 billion.
Billion?
Yes, sir. 300 million of that will be for schools. So 1.6, everything else.
I think we're about 8, and don't quote me, but if I remember looking at the budget, it's about $80 or $90 million to take care of the federal lands.
And so we don't have to sue to get the money that they.
Look, John brought up a great point too, and this is why I'm telling you, they're crack addicts down there. It's terrible. We get 11% of our school funding from the federal government. And in order for us to take that 11%, we have to spend another 9 to 11% on top of it to receive it, because those are the strings attached. And I see all the gears turning. We're losing. We're at a break-even point, and the federal government is telling us how to educate our children.
There you go. How?
But we don't want to give up that money.
Why can't people understand that that money would be all Wyoming's? None of it would go to DC. None of it. It would be Wyoming's land, the money would stay here.
I almost want to tell
We're
her.
eating crumbs off the plate.
I almost want to tell everybody, hey, let's just not pay our taxes this year. If I could get the whole state to not pay their federal taxes, hey, there's not enough jail space for all of us. Yeah, which is not a big problem anymore. Colleen.
I know John talked a little bit about the pro-life bills, but would you briefly talk about the chemical abortion bill and what happened? Because that was eye-opening. I tried to share a lot of that people don't think we do abortions in Wyoming, and what came out of that committee meeting.
They don't call abortions, they call them termination.
And they do them in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where all the money is. There were doctors, and you go sit through these committee meetings, and it just blows you away. They don't even talk about the issue. Oh, you're going to take all these drugs we use away from people. No, that's not what the bill said. You can still use the drugs when you're, I believe it's called the DNC, or if you have a failed pregnancy, they use the drugs to help pass everything. Nobody was attacking that. Nobody said you couldn't do that. They said you couldn't take a 16-year-old girl into a back room and pump her full of drugs. send her home for a painful abortion in her house. That's what the bill was aimed at. And you'll see that again, too. We got close with that one.
Can I explain what happened with the votes on that one?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is very indicative of what happened. I think Colleen probably watched it, that's the reason she's bringing it up, but that bill passed his committee, then it passed the Senate. That bill passed his committee, then it passed the Senate, and it came to the House, where nothing happened to it. Again, just like his bill, SF-80, to get the health officers under control, it was put in a drawer. But what we did, our group of 17, is we kind of put our political careers on the line and said, we want you to pull that bill out so we can vote on it, okay? So we basically told leadership, we're going against you on this. And we had a vote, and it was 28 to 32. So we were not able to pull that out. But we, just like he's mentioned, we called for the ayes and noes. So we know exactly who voted against that. So we'll let you know when, if you want to come and see me, and I'll get those names for you.
I'd like to talk about the money side of it. You guys said that you were able to keep the taxation back this year, but we're all smart enough to know that we still have a shortfall, and we're all smart enough to know they're gonna bring taxation back. What is the solutions that have been put out there to not tax the people, but be able to help Wyoming come up out of the shortfall? And or what's the likelihood that we will see a tax get passed?
I don't think you're going to see a tax get passed in the next 2 or 3 years.
Why do you say that?
Yeah. In the Senate, that is like terrible words. Nobody even wants to touch it. At the end of the day, what I've learned is we have these things called coffee cans. They call them coffee cans. Emergency supply funds. And they're hidden. It's like 5 guys that know where all the coffee cans are. I asked the question. They're like, no, you're going to have to figure that one out. We're not sure where they are. You know how screwed up, excuse my language, our accounting system is in the state of Wyoming? The Game and Fish has its own software setup. WyoDot has its own software setup. And then the general fund is run off yet a third accounting software. Never does anything meet in the middle. And then you got the coffee cans. I think, well, what I found is Campbell County school system has $160 million ferreted away, and they won't take a 3% cut. WyoDot, hundreds of millions. I don't want to pick on the county commissioners, but they got a pretty good sized coffee can too, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's all over the place. So they're like, Troy, why won't you support a tax? Because I don't know where we're at. Do we need a tax? If we need a tax, I'll sign up for a tax if we absolutely have to do it. I like policemen. My house is on fire. I want the fire department to show up. I like driving on nice roads. I hear they have some in Wyoming somewhere. And yet, we're in a transportation committee meeting trying to argue over giving WyoDot $80 million to change their computer system. NASA just spent $35 million on a computer system that sends stuff to Mars. But we need 80?
Cell phones are only $1,000 a piece.
Oh, now we're going to get into that too. WyoLink. Let me tell you what we did with your tax dollars for WyoLink. That's supposed to work everywhere in the state. Emergency network.
Yeah.
They take the governor out. You can't make this up. They take the governor out to a remote spot, and they give him his Wirelink phone, and he calls, and nobody answers. Do you know how they fixed the problem? One of the other state troopers got his cell phone out and went, hey, you need to answer the phone. $135 million. They're not even answering it. It's been a ride. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that's going to be passed that would shut down the executive orders from Biden? Like South Dakota passed something, I can't remember what it was.
The nullify law.
Especially for like the gun control.
14-16 in the Senate this time. It lost.
Oh my God. All right, we need to know.
But
which bill was that?
I'm going to have to look it up. I don't remember many of the numbers. Because, you know, there's a lot of numbers.
You know how
Sovereignty is
how the other senators that are either in our county or sister counties vote on the nullification bill?
Yes, I do.
Would you share that with us? I'm talking like activities.
Like Senator Wasserberg?
You vote against it?
Oh,
You
yeah.
vote against the nullification bill? Driscoll?
What's your argument against them?
Federal funding. Pennies from heaven. We don't want to make the Biden administration mad.
But they don't say that. What's their verbal?
All of the money and who benefits?
Oh, they'll get up and tell you, oh, yeah, there's a 10th Amendment. It's important. We really don't want to cause that much trouble, though, and, you know, they're not going to listen to us anyway.
Why vote for a con then?
Thank you.
You know?
I had a guy at a conference committee, one of the representatives, when I told him this bill that they were trying to pass was unconstitutional, go see Section 1, or Article 1, Section 38, Paragraph C. So he opens up his little blue book, and it's almost brand new. And he's been there for 16 years. It's like, this is a tool, buddy. Go read it. You know what he said to me? Well, it says that, but are you taking it literally? Oh.
Just like the Constitution.
Troy, explain what constitution or con-con is.
The con is a constitutional convention where they're going to get 38 states all together. They're going to put them in a room and they're going to fix our Constitution. You know that Constitution that we don't follow? So we're going to elect these people. We got close to doing it once. And here's what happened. Everybody went in the room for 14 days. They couldn't even agree on the rules. So finally it was like, hey, we better just go home. This isn't going to happen. And it didn't get through the House and the Senate either, but the argument was each state should get one vote. What do you think California said? We should get 50. Texas, we need 32. And everybody from Wyoming, I guess that means we get one? But they want to rewrite the Constitution, and everybody's excited about it. They dangle stuff out there like term limits. Do you know what the proposed term limits on this convention was? If you were a senator, you could only be there 32 years. And I'm not making this up. It's amazing.
Do you think they do that because somebody can just basically go in there and change something else when no one else is paying attention?
I believe that's what the goal was. I think they wanted to hit the First and the Second Amendment, and they told you all that once we get you in the room, we can only vote on this. And if those guys do something wrong, we can prosecute them.
Is Wyoming legislature considering anything about prohibiting, preventing any flavor of the vaccine passport?
Yes. Once again, we got close this time, but we didn't make it. But I think we'll get after it again.
Because I mean, I foresee that being, you know, Microsoft and Salesforce have already published white papers where all they had to do was change a few things on the back end, and it could automatically be linked to your purchasing, your ability to leave your home. I mean, it would just go down a dark path very quickly.
You mean there's nanobots in that vaccination?
Whatever there is, I don't want it. And so, you know, and I don't want them to be able to say, well, if you don't take it, then you don't get on the cruise ship to leave the island that the volcano is erupting. I'm sure you heard about that.
Well put.
Hey, my friend, what if we are the volcano that's about to erupt?
I think we're closer to that than you realize.
Let's do it.
And you should be very thankful you live in Wyoming.
Yeah, buddy.
Because it's pretty tame here compared to the rest of the country right now.
There's a reason for that. We got most of the guns.
Say it.
Probably a few veterans in this crowd, but I see a lot of flags at half-mast for no reason, really. I'm one of those who fought for the flag, and when we fought for the flag flew, and I was taught in grade school that the flag would come down at half-mast to remember a dignitary, an ambassador, or something like that. Not for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Everybody dies. If that's the case, the flag needs to just come down.
Did you just say that? Everybody dies? Look, I'm from the government, and I'm going to make your life last longer. Just do what I tell you.
Anyhow, I had to go tell the post office to get their flag up. It's been down. It's supposed to have been flying since the 6th. That's almost a week. It's been down past when it's supposed to come up. That's carelessness.
Is that a government-run operation?
The flag needs to fly because we're a sovereign country. You could bring it down for 2 reasons. Remember dignitaries, or if you want to surrender.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't it supposed to be down 10 days for the shooting in Boulder?
That's not a dignitary.
Wait, it's not a dignitary, but Biden ordered it.
So, you know, if they can allow states to shut down, like in Oregon, they can say, well, President Trump, you can't come in and arrest all of these people because they have a right to say their piece, okay? Well, we ought to be able to, in Wyoming, say, we have the right to fly this flag.
Real quick, I think they're getting ready to take the microphone away from me. My 8 minutes is up. Yes, sir.
If this state was 72% in favor of President Trump being reelected, how can we have all these liberals in our Congress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called banking system.
Good question.
They've been there forever. You've heard the term rhino? They run as a Republican. We don't always pay attention to who we're voting for or what's going on. But I gotta believe that's changing.
Yes, that's right.
Because there was a guy who knew a guy who was a Senate District 24 senator. He's not there now. And it was everybody in this room and their family and their friends. Campbell County's fortunate in that the average person in this county pays attention, and they really are now. So if you're all not happy with what I'm doing, get rid of me.
Troy, are they gonna bring back in the committee on the one to where if you don't get 50% of the the primary vote?
No.
Are they gonna bring that back up?
No. Maybe next year. Here's what happened with that. All of the county clerks got together and said, oh, we're redistricting, this is too hard, we can't get it done. So let us get redistricted and then maybe we'll talk about it later. Sounds like a good argument, maybe. I wish I knew more about it, but I think it was pretty much, we kind of like doing things the way we do it. We don't want to change.
Seems kind of convenient that they wait till after the midterms. They're okayed for 23, but not
Yeah.
in 2022.
Oh, we got a governor, we got to get reelected. We got a House rep out in DC we're trying to save, some of us.
Listening to you talk, you sound frustrated, and right, the job you got takes a lot of courage. How's your attitude?
Good. I will tell you this, Medicaid expansion, they got a computer program together. It emailed me and sent me a text message every 15 minutes for 2 days. Well, it was all over, that's like 1,900 messages here, there, and everywhere. And they were calling me everything.
Isn't that harassment?
Oh, it was harassment. But it was entertaining. And I got to be known as the butcher. Because, you know, there's not 90 legislators down there. When it came to Medicaid expansion, there was one. Troy McKeown. I got my name in a Washington, D.C. paper. I
Must be doing it right.
killed Medicaid all by myself.
Can we buy venison at Don's supermarket now?
I gotta go run a few over. But yes, we do sell venison and buffalo.
I want to go back to that committee meeting, by the way, where we talked about the chemical abortions. If nobody watched that for any reason, but for the doctor who said that the bill was racist, and Senator, if you know who Senator Hutchings is on the committee, I think that was probably the most inappropriate but appropriate timing of anybody on a committee meeting to say something like that. So
I sit next to Lynn.
she's so good.
Did she say something, Lynn?
She did. So Lynn Hutchings is a very conservative senator. She's an African-American lady, and this doctor told them the bill was racist. And I just thought, is he looking at everybody on the committee? Does he know anybody on the committee?
Do we know Chris Rothfuss? Has anybody heard of Senator Rothfuss out of Laramie? Senator Rothfuss stood up on the Senate floor and said, we can't change these voting laws because it will disenfranchise minorities. They won't be able to get voter ID.
Oh.
And I look to the left of me and there's Lynn going from a low hover to a high hover. And she gets up and just blasts him. What do you think, I'm too stupid to get voter ID? Is it because I'm a woman or because I'm black? Or is it both? She's like, this is ridiculous.
They've been treating minorities that way for 100 years. That's what they keep going.
And you put a quarter in Lynn Hutchings?
Oh, boy.
You know, watch that merry-go-round.
That's why we need to all start names from Lynn.
And I've probably kept you all too long. I appreciate you showing up tonight. I want to thank everybody for your support.
Thank you for coming.
I think turn it back over to Pastor Ed.
Thank you, Troy and John, both. Thank you both for being here tonight.